I'd been working since I was 16, never asked anyone for money, and even paid for my own education. When I finally bought my first home on my own, my parents sued me, claiming I had stolen my sister's future. I was finally holding the keys to my very first home, a moment that should have been pure triumph, the culmination of 13 years of relentless work. But instead of celebration, what I found waiting for me was a gut-wrenching betrayal. My own parents were suing me, demanding 70% of my house, claiming I'd stolen my sister's future. I grew up in a seemingly normal suburban home in Minneapolis, just my dad John, my mom Karen, and my sister Emma, who was 8 years younger than me. But behind that perfectly manicured lawn, our house was a battlefield of hushed whispers and explosive arguments about money. Bills constantly piled up, and every time I walked into a room, the conversation about finances would abruptly stop. Looking back, it wasn't a lack of income, it was a total lack of financial sense. But what really cut deep, even as a child, was the stark, undeniable difference in how my parents treated Emma and me. Emma was the golden child, the special one with natural talent, destined for greatness. Me? I was just Amanda. The unspoken message was loud and clear. I was ordinary, average, not worth investing in. By 14, I'd absorbed that message. I became the practical and responsible one. I started doing chores for our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, earning $10 an hour. That first taste of earning my own money, buying my own school supplies, it was liberating. And my parents, they never asked where the money came from. They just seemed relieved they didn't have to provide. The moment I turned 16, I snagged my first real job at Sweet Dreams Bakery. I'd finish school, then practically sprint 6 blocks to work until closing, sometimes as late as 7:30 p.m., before heading home to face my homework. The owner, Diane, became this incredible mentor, teaching me everything from baking to budgeting. I was so excited for my first paycheck. I dreamt of opening a savings account, of college, of freedom. But that dream shattered instantly. My father sat me down at the kitchen table, a calculator pushed ominously toward me. "Now that you're earning money," he said flatly, "you need to contribute. 30% of your earnings goes to us for rent, food, utilities." I stared at him, my 16-year-old brain reeling. "But Dad, I'm supposed to be saving for college." My mother, leaning in the doorway, just laughed. "Amanda, be realistic. With your grades, you're better off learning a trade. Besides, Emma needs a college fund. She has a real future ahead of her." That 30% rule became my crushing reality throughout high school. I never missed a payment. Meanwhile, Emma's world was filled with piano lessons, ballet classes, and a newly redecorated room. My room? Still the same twin bed from childhood. My routine was relentless. School, work, homework until midnight, double shifts on weekends, summers spent working full-time instead of enjoying teenage freedom. And if I dared buy myself a new shirt, my mother would sneer. "Another new shirt, Amanda? You should be more responsible with your money." This from the woman who just dropped $300 on a special ballet costume for Emma. My junior year, I secretly took on a second job at the local library, telling my parents it was for extra spending money. In truth, it was for my actual college fund. It paid less, but those quiet hours let me study, and my grades soared. Mrs. Peterson, who'd truly become a grandmother to me, noticed my exhaustion. "Amanda, dear," she said, pouring me hot chocolate, "you're working yourself to the bone. What are you saving for that requires so much sacrifice?" When I told her, tears welled in her eyes. "Your parents should be supporting your dreams, not the other way around." From then on, she'd pay me extra, insisting I put it straight into my college fund. By senior year, I had a 3.8 GPA and nearly $8,000 saved. My guidance counselor championed me, helping me apply for scholarships and financial aid. When acceptance letters started rolling in, my parents seemed more annoyed than proud. "College is expensive," my father warned. "Don't come crying to us when you can't afford it." I promised them I wouldn't. I never had before, and I wasn't about to start now. When the acceptance letter from State University arrived, complete with a partial academic scholarship, I felt this bizarre mix of soaring pride and utter terror. The scholarship covered 60% of tuition. Amazing. But that left 40% plus room and board, and my hard-won $8,000 barely touched the first year. My parents' reaction? lukewarm at best. I tried to share the news excitedly at dinner, hoping for some flicker of acknowledgement. My father, barely looking up from his plate, just grunted. State University? That's expensive for what it is. You know we can't help you with that. I'm not asking for help, Dad. I shot back. I have my scholarship and savings. I'll figure out the rest. My mother let out a dramatic sigh. I don't understand why you need to go at all. You have a perfectly good job at the bakery. Diane would probably make you assistant manager if you stayed. Because I want more than that, Mom. I want a career, not just a job. Then came the punch to the gut. And what about your contribution to this household? My father demanded. How are we supposed to make up that shortfall? It was like a lightning bolt. They weren't teaching me responsibility. They were using my income to prop up their own budget so they could afford Emma's activities. I wasn't their daughter being guided to independence. I was just another income source. I'm sorry, but I am going to college, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, even to myself. I've worked for this and I'm taking it. The weeks leading up to move-in were a blur of cold shoulders and passive-aggressive jabs. My parents acted like I was abandoning them, not pursuing an education. Only Emma, at 11, seemed genuinely happy, though she couldn't grasp the tension. Move-in day was a solo mission. My parents claimed they couldn't take time off. So I packed my life into suitcases and took the bus. My roommate, Jennifer, arrived with her entire family, who lovingly decorated her side of the room with coordinated bedding and family photos. I quietly unpacked my second-hand sheets and a single-framed picture of Emma and me. That first night, listening to Jennifer call her parents, already missing them, I silently cried into my pillow. It wasn't because I missed my family. It was because I finally understood how profoundly abnormal my own family dynamic was. College was a brutal financial reality. Even with the scholarship, the costs were relentless. Within my first week, I found a job as a server. The hours were insane. Straight from classes to work 5 to 11 p.m. on weeknights, then back to the dorm to study until the early morning. Weekends were double shifts, leaving me too exhausted for anything else. Sophomore year, I added a second job as a teaching assistant. The pay was minimal, but the experience was priceless, and it boosted my resume. Between both, I managed to keep my student loans to about $10,000 a year. My tiny dorm room became both my sanctuary and my prison. My desk lamp would burn until 3 or 4 a.m. as I fought to keep up with assignments. Cup noodles weren't a college cliché for me. They were often my only meal, costing less than $1. Every penny was tracked in a meticulous budget. Spreadsheet. Jennifer eventually moved out, complaining my late-night studying and early alarms disturbed her. Her replacement, Jessica, was a scholarship student who also worked part-time. Jessica understood. We clicked instantly. My parents help when they can, but there are 5 kids, she told me one night. I'm the first to go to college, so I'm the experiment. At least they support you emotionally. I blurted out, bitterness seeping into my tone. Jessica looked at me thoughtfully. Your family situation sounds really toxic, Amanda. Have you ever talked to someone about it? Like a therapist. I scoffed. With what time or money? Therapy's a luxury I can't afford. Despite the relentless grind, I excelled. My finance and business classes felt so real after years of managing my own shoestring budget. Professors noticed my drive, and my junior year I landed a summer internship at Meridian Financial Services. That internship was a game changer. For the first time, I felt genuinely valued. My supervisor, Michael, was impressed by my grit. The pay, compared to my other jobs, felt like a fortune, allowing me to build a small cushion for senior year. Throughout college, conversations with my parents were rare, and always about money. They never called to ask how I was doing. It was always, Emma needs new point shoes, they're $200. Or the refrigerator broke, we need $400 for repairs. Or the big one. Emma got accepted to a special summer music camp. It's $2,000. I sent money when I could, always telling myself it was for Emma, not enabling my parents. But each request eroded me, leaving me feeling used, not loved. Senior year brought Tyler, a smart, kind classmate from a genuinely loving family. He was everything I hadn't experienced. When he invited me home for Thanksgiving, I saw for the first time what a real supportive family looked like. His parents asked about my classes, my dreams, my opinions. They cared about me. That night, Tyler found me crying alone in the guest room. Because I didn't know families could be like yours. I confessed, tears streaming. I didn't know parents could love their children without conditions. That Thanksgiving shattered my distorted view of family. I realized my experience wasn't just my family. It was toxic, unhealthy, and I deserved so much better. I graduated cum laude with a finance degree. Not a single family member attended my ceremony. Emma wanted to, but my parents claimed a 3-hour drive was too expensive. Michael, my internship supervisor, saw my potential and offered me a full-time position at Meridian. A starting salary of $50,000 a year felt like winning the lottery after years of minimum wage. My very first major decision post-graduation was housing. While my colleagues rented trendy apartments, blowing 30 to 40% of their income, I deliberately chose a tiny studio 45 minutes from the office. My rent? A mere 20% of my take-home pay. This wasn't just a cost-saving measure. It was a deliberate strategy, a launchpad for my next financial goals. Crushing student loan debt and saving for a house. I mapped out a meticulous 5-year plan. My lifestyle remained unapologetically frugal. Packed lunches, discount grocery stores, public transport. I politely declined countless invitations to happy hours and weekend trips, knowing each $60 dinner or $300 getaway would just push my dreams further away. Jessica remained my anchor. Most people our age aren't thinking about retirement accounts or mortgage rates. She'd laugh over cheap pizza. Well, I'd respond, most people our age didn't have to pay rent to their parents at 16. My on-again, off-again relationship with Tyler became something more complicated. He respected my goals but struggled to grasp the intensity. You deserve to enjoy life now, he'd argue. I am enjoying life, I'd counter. Financial security is worth more to me than temporary pleasures. Eventually, our paths diverged. We chose friendship, a painful but necessary decision to maintain my focus. My dedication at work didn't go unnoticed. Within 18 months, I earned my first promotion to financial analyst, bumping my salary to $62,000. Did I splurge? No. Every extra dollar went straight to my student loans. By the end of my 3rd year at Meridian, I'd obliterated $40,000 in student debt, built a $12,000 emergency fund, and was seriously saving for a house. It felt monumental, a silent scream of defiance against my past. But there was no one in my immediate family who truly understood the weight of that achievement. My relationship with my parents remained a one-sided struggle. Conversations were still rare, still centered on money. Emma was in high school now, excelling in music and academics, and my parents spoke of her potential with the same reverence as always. Emma's piano teacher thinks she could get into Juilliard, my mother announced during one of our infrequent calls. Of course, the application process and audition prep will be expensive. The unspoken demand hung heavy in the air. I'd already sent them $3,000 that year for various Emma expenses. I always told myself it was for my sister, but the line was blurring, dissolving. Mom, I have my own financial goals, I said carefully. I can't be Emma's college fund. The silence on the other end was arctic. Oh, I see. Your sister's future means nothing to you now that you have your fancy job and city apartment. The familiar guilt trip. But this time something in me snapped. That's not fair. I've helped a lot over the years, but I can't be expected to finance another person's education when I just finished paying for my own. The call ended badly, with my mother calling me selfish and cold. It stung, but I held my ground. 2 weeks later, my father called with a more direct approach. Emma got accepted to Westfield University. $40,000 a year for tuition. We need to know how much you can contribute. Westfield, a prestigious art school, came with an astronomical price tag. Over $160,000 total. I was floored. Dad, I don't have that kind of money to give. You make good money now. You could take out a loan to help your sister. That's what family does. The bitter irony was not lost on me. Family helps each other when they can. No one helped me with my education. That was different, he scoffed. You were always independent. I wasn't given a choice. I retorted. The conversation spiraled into old accusations and deep-seated resentments. He hung up. calling me selfish and saying I was breaking my mother's heart. Despite the emotional wreckage, I clung to my financial plan. Then Emma called herself, timidly asking about college funding. I took a different tack. Emma, I can't pay your tuition, but I can help you apply for scholarships, look at more affordable schools, and teach you how to manage your money so you can be independent like I had to be. Her response shocked me. I never asked them to put this on you, Amanda. I know how hard you worked for everything. That conversation was the first real connection I'd had with my sister in years. We started talking regularly, me as an advisor and sounding board, not a walking ATM. I helped her secure a significant scholarship package at a state university, much like my own. My parents, of course, were disappointed, seeing it as settling. But they still kept pushing me for contributions, which I grudgingly earmarked for Emma's textbooks or dorm supplies. By my 5th year at Meridian, now a senior financial analyst pulling in $78,000, I had finally saved enough for a 20% down payment on a modest home. All those years of relentless sacrifice, of denying myself small pleasures, were about to culminate in the stability I'd craved since childhood. What I couldn't have predicted was just how monumentally my family would react to this milestone, or how their reaction would fundamentally shatter our relationship forever. House hunting was this thrilling, terrifying roller coaster. My real estate agent, Natalie, was incredibly patient as we scoured dozens of properties. Most first-time buyers my age were looking for condos or renting, she observed, genuinely impressed that I was buying a house outright. I just smiled, a rare surge of pride. I've been working towards this since I was 16. Then we found it. A charming 1920s bungalow, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a small but functional kitchen, a tiny backyard. At $220,000, it was perfect. Signing the mortgage papers felt utterly surreal. Years of planning, and still I could barely believe it. The loan officer was genuinely surprised. Most people your age have minimal credit history and mountains of student debt. I paid off my student loans 3 years ago, I said, the pride practically vibrating in my voice. The day I got the keys, I stood alone in the empty living room, tears blurring my vision. This wasn't just a financial investment, it was a psychological one. It was tangible proof that I had built something for myself, that I could provide the security my parents never gave me. Jessica and Tyler joined me for the unofficial housewarming, bringing champagne and pizza. We sat on the floor toasting. To Amanda, Jessica proclaimed, who worked harder than anyone I know to get here. To having roots, Tyler added, something you deserve more than anyone. After I'd settled in for a few weeks, I decided to invite my family over. Despite the constant strain, this was a huge milestone, and part of me, naive as it sounds, hoped seeing my success would make them proud. They arrived on a Saturday afternoon. My father immediately started critically eyeing the exterior as they walked up the path. "It's small," was his very first comment. "Perfect size for me," I replied, trying to hold on to my positive mood. My mother walked through the rooms with an air of faint distaste, touching surfaces, searching for flaws. "This neighborhood isn't very upscale, is it? It's safe and convenient to my office," I calmly explained. Emma, now in her 2nd year of college, seemed genuinely happy. "I think it's awesome, Amanda. You worked so hard for this." I'd prepared lunch, desperate to create a pleasant atmosphere, hoping for a new chapter. But as we sat at my brand new dining table, the small talk quickly dissolved. My mother set down her fork and cleared her throat. "Emma has some news she needs to share." Emma looked down at her plate, radiating discomfort. I might have to take a break from school next semester." "What? Why?" I asked, my concern genuine. "My scholarship wasn't renewed," she whispered. "And my student loan application was denied because of Dad's credit score." "We've had some financial setbacks," my father interjected defensively. "Medical bills, car repairs, you know how it is." "So what's the plan?" I asked, a cold dread already tightening in my chest. "Well," my mother began, her tone shifting into that familiar, ominous register. "We thought, given your new purchase, that you must be in a very comfortable financial position. I just bought a house. I'm not exactly flush with cash right now," I shot back. "But surely you must have savings left. Or you could take out a home equity loan," my father suggested, completely serious. "Emma needs about $20,000 for this year." I stared at them, absolutely stunned. I used all my savings for the down payment. And I am not going to borrow against the house I just bought. So you're just going to let your sister drop out of college? My mother demanded, her voice rising. After all we've done for you. The sheer audacity of that statement left me speechless for a beat. What exactly have you done for me? I finally erupted, the dam breaking. I've been working and supporting myself since I was 16. I paid for my own education. I bought this house entirely on my own. We raised you, my father indignantly countered. We put a roof over your head. A roof I paid rent for as a teenager. I retorted. The argument spiraled, vicious and swift. They accused me of being selfish, of abandoning my family, of forgetting where I came from. I threw back the years of financial support I'd given them, the complete lack of support I'd received, the utter injustice of expecting me to mortgage my future for Emma. You've always been jealous of the attention Emma received, my mother shrieked. This is your way of punishing her for being more talented. This has nothing to do with Emma. I insisted, my voice shaking. This is about boundaries and reasonable expectations. Emma, who had been silent, finally spoke up, her voice small. Please stop fighting. I'll figure something out. I can take a semester off and work full-time. Absolutely not, my mother snapped. You are not throwing away your future because your sister is too selfish to help. I turned to Emma. I can help you look into more scholarships or work-study programs. There are alternatives to dropping out or going into massive debt. The only alternative, my father cut in, his face red, is for you to step up and do the right thing. Family takes care of family. I have been taking care of this family financially since I was a teenager. I screamed, all patience gone. I am done being your ATM. My father shot to his feet. If that's how you feel, then perhaps we need to reconsider what family means. You clearly have the resources to help, but are choosing not to. This house represents years of sacrifice and hard work. I pleaded. I am not jeopardizing that. That house, my mother spat, should be helping secure Emma's future, not sitting here as a monument to your selfishness. As they gathered their things to leave, my father delivered a parting shot that would haunt me. This is not over, Amanda. If you won't do the right thing voluntarily, there are other ways to ensure family obligations are met. I dismissed it as an empty threat, the kind of dramatic statement they always made. I was wrong. 3 weeks after that horrific lunch, an envelope arrived from the county court. Inside, a summons. I was being sued by John and Karen Collins, my parents. They wanted 70% of my new home's value, roughly $154,000. The legal complaint was an absolute work of fiction, alleging I had a moral and implied financial obligation to fund Emma's education, and that buying my own house was financial abandonment and theft of family resources. It even used the phrase stealing her sister's future to describe my home purchase. I sat there on my living room floor, papers scattered around me, utterly numb. This couldn't be real. Parents don't sue their children over money. They don't drag private family disputes into courtrooms. But the official seal, the case number, it was no joke. My hands trembled as I dialed their number, clutching onto a desperate sliver of hope that this was some sick, elaborate scare tactic. My father answered, his voice eerily calm. Yes, Dad. I just got court papers. Are you and Mom actually suing me? We are simply seeking what is fair, Amanda, he said, as if he were discussing the weather. You refused to help your sister voluntarily, so we are pursuing legal means. This is insane. You can't possibly think a court will force me to give you my house money. Our lawyer thinks we have a case, he continued, oblivious, based on family obligation and implied contract. You benefited from family resources growing up. Now you owe a return on that investment. The conversation was a bizarre, surreal nightmare. He outlined their position as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. Dad, please, I pleaded. This will destroy any relationship we still have. That's your choice, Amanda. Do the right thing and we can put this behind us. After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence for what felt like an eternity before finally calling Jessica. She arrived half an hour later, armed with wine and fierce determination. This cannot be legal, she insisted, poring over the documents. They can't just claim a right to your house because they want the money. The next morning, for the first time in my career, I called in sick. I spent the day frantically searching for a lawyer, and by noon, I had an appointment with Linda Cohen, a family law attorney. Linda's office was warm, a stark contrast to the icy terror gripping me. After reviewing the documents, she looked up, a mix of sympathy and professional assessment in her eyes. "I've seen some contentious family disputes in 20 years, she said. But parents suing a child for buying their own home? That's certainly unique. Her next words were a lifeline. The good news is their case has virtually no legal merit. They cannot actually take 70% of your house. There's no legal principle that says parents are entitled to their adult child's assets based on some implied obligation to a sibling, she explained. The problem is, defending yourself will still cost money and emotional energy. We mapped out a strategy. I needed to gather every piece of evidence of my financial independence, tax returns showing I hadn't been claimed as a dependent since 18, proof I paid for my own education, and documentation of every dollar I'd ever given them. Their case hinges on the idea that you owe them something, Linda explained. We need to show the balance is actually tilted the other way. The following weeks were a blur of legal preparations, anxiety, and sleepless nights. My work suffered, my focus shattered. Thankfully, Michael, my supervisor, noticed. When I finally explained the situation, his reaction was a profound validation. "Amanda, what your parents are doing is not normal. It is exploitative and abusive." Hearing someone in a position of authority so clearly name the dynamic was both agonizing and liberating. For so long I had normalized their behavior, made excuses, blamed myself. Now outsiders were confirming what I'd only just begun to grasp. My relationship with my parents was fundamentally unhealthy. Support poured in from unexpected corners. Colleagues offered encouragement. Neighbors, hearing bits of the story, brought meals. Even Tyler, despite our complicated past, became a steady presence, helping me organize financial records. Jessica urged me to find a therapist. "This is trauma, Amanda. You need professional support to work through it." I found Dr. Russell, a therapist specializing in family estrangement and financial abuse, who offered a sliding scale. Our sessions slowly helped me unravel decades of guilt and recognize the manipulative patterns. Your parents created a narrative where your role was to provide, not to be provided for, Dr. Russell explained. Children are not supposed to be financial assets to their parents. That reverses the natural order of nurturing. As the court date loomed, I got an unexpected call from Emma. We hadn't spoken since the disastrous lunch. "Amanda," she said, her voice shaking, "I just found out about the lawsuit. I had no idea they were doing this. I never asked them to sue you." "You didn't know?" I asked, surprised, a flicker of hope. "No, I would never want this. I'm so sorry they're putting you through this." Her call was a crucial reminder. Emma was as much a victim of their twisted expectations as I was, just in a different way. The lawsuit consumed my every waking thought, haunted my dreams. I had nightmares of being homeless, of a judge ordering me to hand over my keys. I obsessively checked my bank accounts, calculating how I'd survive if the impossible happened. Linda repeatedly reassured me it wouldn't. "The law simply does not work the way your parents think it does," she'd calmly explain. "Parents cannot force adult children to pay for their siblings' education, no matter how morally right they believe it to be." Yet, the sheer existence of the lawsuit felt like a profound violation. My home, this symbol of security and achievement, had been tainted, becoming a source of intense anxiety. The very parents who should have celebrated my milestone were now actively trying to strip it from me. Linda and I meticulously prepared for court, compiling evidence of every financial contribution I'd ever made. Bank statements showing transfers totaling over $15,000 to my family over the years. Emma even provided a written statement confirming she hadn't asked for or expected financial support for her education. "We have a strong case factually and legally," Linda assured me the night before. "Try to get some rest." Rest, though, felt like an impossible luxury. I lay awake, dreading facing them across a courtroom. Our private family dysfunction laid bare for public consumption. This formalizing of our broken relationship, the final painful severance, felt both inevitable and devastating. The county courthouse loomed, a cold, imposing stone building that felt designed to intimidate. I arrived early with Linda, dressed in a conservative navy suit, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. My parents soon entered with their attorney, a thin man with perpetual frown lines. They didn't even glance my way, taking their seats at the plaintiff's table, their backs ramrod straight. The physical proximity, yet the vast emotional distance, created a bizarre, suffocating atmosphere. Judge Harriet Wilson, a woman in her 60s with piercing eyes, entered. She had this look that said she'd seen absolutely everything. "I've been on this bench for 17 years, she began, peering over her reading glasses. "And I must say this is one of the more unusual family disputes I've encountered. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, you are suing your daughter for 70% of the value of her home to pay for your younger daughter's college education. Is that correct?" My parents' lawyer stood confident. "Yes, Your Honor. My clients believe their elder daughter has a moral obligation to support her sister's education, particularly given the family's financial contributions to her upbringing." Judge Wilson's expression remained neutral, but her tone sharpened. "Moral obligations and legal obligations are not always the same thing, counselor. Please explain the legal basis for your claim." What followed was a tortuous, convoluted argument about implied family contracts and conditional support during my minority. He claimed that by accepting basic parental support, I had implicitly agreed to a lifelong reciprocal obligation. Linda, sitting beside me, took calm notes, occasionally squeezing my arm reassuringly when truly outrageous claims were made. When it was her turn, she rose with composed confidence. "Your Honor, this case has no basis in family law or contract law. Miss Collins was a minor child under her parents' care, which is a legal obligation parents voluntarily assume. Children do not contract to receive basic necessities from their parents." She systematically dismantled every single argument, presenting a mountain of documentation, my tax returns proving financial independence since age 16, proof of self-financing my entire education, and bank records detailing over $15,000 I had given to my family over the years. "Far from taking from the family," Linda explained, "Miss Collins has contributed over $15,000 to her parents and sister since she was 18, money she was under no legal obligation to provide." The judge reviewed the documents with keen interest. "Mr. and Mrs. Collins," she asked, "were you aware of these financial contributions from your daughter?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "Those were gifts, Your Honor, not related to this matter." $15,000 in gifts seems quite generous from someone you are characterizing as selfish and unwilling to support family, Judge Wilson observed, her voice dry. My mother spoke for the first time, her voice tight. "That money was nothing compared to what Emma needs for her education. Amanda has a good job and just bought a house. She clearly has resources she is withholding." The judge turned to me. "Miss Collins, what is your current financial situation after purchasing your home?" With Linda's subtle nod, I explained my meticulous budgeting, the years of saving, my current mortgage. "I am not wealthy, Your Honor. I worked multiple jobs through college, paid off my student loans through strict budgeting, and saved for years to afford a modest home. I simply cannot afford to pay for another person's entire education without jeopardizing my own financial security." Judge Wilson nodded thoughtfully, then turned back to my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Collins, what financial planning did you do for your younger daughter's education?" My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "We expected scholarships would cover most costs," my father finally admitted. "Emma is very talented." "And did you not make the same expectation for your elder daughter's education?" the judge pressed. "Amanda was always independent," my mother said dismissively. "She made her own way. Because I was given no choice," I blurted out, instantly regretting breaking protocol. The judge gave me a measured look, but surprisingly she didn't reprimand me. Instead, she focused on my parents. "Did you contribute financially to Miss Collins's college education?" "We could not afford to at the time," my father mumbled. "Yet you expected her to afford her sister's education now." Judge Wilson's tone made her skepticism crystal clear. The proceedings dragged on, a painful airing of family dirty laundry. My parents' lawyer tried to frame it as a simple sibling dispute, asking the court to enforce fairness. Linda hammered home the legal autonomy of adult children and the complete absence of any contractual obligation. As the arguments wound down, the courtroom door quietly creaked open. Emma slipped in, taking a seat in the back row. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw a mix of embarrassment and quiet resolve in her face. After a final round of statements, Judge Wilson called a 15-minute recess. As we waited, Emma hesitantly approached our table. "Can I speak to the judge?" she asked Linda, her voice barely a whisper. "About the fact that I never asked for any of this, and I don't want Amanda to pay for my education this way." Linda, ever cautious, explained it might not be allowed at this stage but told Emma to stay close. When Judge Wilson returned, she surprised everyone by calling Emma forward. "I understand you are Emma Collins, the younger sister whose education is at the center of this dispute. Do you wish to make a statement to the court?" Emma stood nervously in the center of the courtroom. "Yes, Your Honor," she began, her voice gaining strength. "I want to make clear that I never asked my parents to sue my sister. I didn't know about this lawsuit until recently. I would never want Amanda to be forced to pay for my education, especially not by giving up her home that she worked so hard to buy." My mother made a small choked noise of protest, which the judge silenced with a stern look. Emma continued, confidence growing. "Amanda has always helped me when she could. She helped me apply for scholarships and financial aid. She taught me how to budget and manage money, skills our parents never taught either of us. I have options for continuing my education without taking anything from my sister." Judge Wilson thanked Emma for her statement. Then she delivered her ruling. "Having reviewed all evidence and testimony in this matter, I find the plaintiff's claim wholly without merit. There is no legal basis for forcing an adult child to finance a sibling's education, regardless of any perceived moral obligation. Furthermore, the evidence clearly shows that Miss Amanda Collins has already provided substantial financial support to her family over the years, far beyond any reasonable expectation." She turned her gaze directly to my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Collins, the court is troubled by your apparent differential treatment of your daughters. You seem to have expected financial independence from one while assuming ongoing support for the other. This is not a matter for legal remedy, but rather family counseling." The judge dismissed the case. And then in a final unexpected move, she ordered my parents to pay my legal fees, stating their lawsuit was frivolous and vexatious. As the courtroom began to clear, I remained seated, completely overwhelmed by the finality. The legal battle was over, but the emotional damage felt irreparable. My parents walked out without a word, their rigid backs and quickened pace radiating their fury. Emma approached me tentatively. "Amanda, I am so sorry about all of this." "It's not your fault," I assured her, my voice hoarse. "Can we talk? Maybe get coffee or something?" I nodded, unable to speak further. Whatever came next, nothing in our family relationships would ever be the same. This lawsuit had forced a painful public confrontation with decades of dysfunction that could no longer be ignored. As Linda gathered our papers, she offered a gentle observation. "Family estrangement is painful, Amanda, but sometimes it's necessary for healing to begin. You've legally established your right to boundaries. Now you can start the process of emotional boundaries too." Walking out of that courthouse, I felt a complex mix of vindication, grief, and to my surprise, a flicker of hope. For the very first time in my life, I had publicly stood up for myself against my parents' demands. The victory felt hollow given the cost, but it was a crucial first step towards a healthier future. The days that followed the court hearing blurred into a confusing whirlwind of conflicting emotions. There was immense relief that my home was safe, but it was overshadowed by a profound sadness about the wreckage of my family relationships. I took a week off work, needing to process everything, spending quiet days in the house that had transformed from sanctuary to battleground and back again. I didn't hear from my parents. I didn't expect to. The courtroom had simply made explicit what had been implicit for decades. Our relationship was fundamentally broken, built on obligation and expectation, not love or acceptance. The lawsuit hadn't created this dysfunction. It had merely exposed it in the harshest possible light. Linda's advice about continuing therapy resonated deeply. Dr. Russell helped me understand that mourning a relationship that never truly existed is still valid grief. "You are mourning the parents you deserved but never had," she explained, her words hitting home. "That loss is real, even if the relationship itself was unhealthy. We worked on establishing internal boundaries, the emotional mirror to the legal ones the court had affirmed. I learned to recognize and challenge the insidious voice of guilt that had been drilled into me since childhood. The belief that I was selfish for having my own needs, for setting my own boundaries. 2 weeks after the court case, Emma and I met for coffee at a neutral cafe. The conversation was awkward at first, years of family dynamics creating an invisible barrier. "I moved out of Mom and Dad's house," she said, after we'd exhausted small talk. "I'm staying with my friend Sophia until I figure things out." "Are you still in school?" I asked, genuinely curious. She nodded. "I reduced my course load and got a job at the campus bookstore. It'll take me longer, but I'll get there. And I applied for more scholarships like you suggested." "I'm proud of you, Emma," I said, and I truly meant it. Taking control of your own path isn't easy. "I had a good example," she replied, meeting my eyes directly. "I always admired how independent you were, even though I didn't understand until recently that it wasn't by choice." That conversation marked the fragile beginning of a new relationship between us, one based on mutual respect, finally free from the competitive dynamic our parents had fostered. Emma began to share her struggles and triumphs with me as a peer, not the favored child seeking handouts. As the months passed, I slowly, deliberately rebuilt my life around my truth, rather than the family mythology. My home, now completely free from legal threat, truly became my haven. I painted walls, planted a small garden, and gradually furnished rooms with pieces that simply brought me joy. Each improvement felt like an affirmation of my right to create security for myself. Work, too, provided a powerful source of stability. Michael, understanding the personal crisis I'd weathered, offered me additional responsibilities, which led to another promotion. The increased income allowed me to start a modest investment portfolio, cementing my goal of long-term financial security. Jessica remained my steadfast friend, celebrating every small victory and offering perspective during moments of doubt. "You know what amazes me most about you," she said one Saturday as we installed kitchen shelves. "Your capacity for joy despite everything. You never became bitter." Her observation surprised me, as I hadn't recognized that quality in myself. But she was right. Despite the profound family dysfunction, I hadn't allowed it to define my entire worldview. I still found pleasure in small things, still believed in the possibility of healthy relationships. Inspired by my own tumultuous journey, I started a blog about financial independence for young adults from difficult family backgrounds. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments poured in, people sharing strikingly similar experiences. What began as a personal outlet evolved into an online support community, with regular video chats and resource sharing. Through this platform, I connected with others who understood the unique challenges of building stability without family support. We discussed practical matters like credit and emergency funds, but also the emotional toll, setting boundaries, managing guilt. This community became an unexpected source of deep healing, a powerful reminder that shared experience diminishes isolation. 6 months after the court case, a handwritten letter from my mother arrived. The envelope sat unopened on my counter for 3 agonizing days before I found the courage to read it. "Amanda," it began, "the past months have given me time to reflect on our relationship and my role as your mother. While I still believe families should support each other, I recognize now that we placed unfair burdens on you from a young age. This realization has been painful to acknowledge." The letter continued with an awkward, almost clumsy, but seemingly genuine attempt at an apology. Didn't take full responsibility, but it did acknowledge mistakes. She requested a meeting to begin healing our family, a phrase that simultaneously triggered a flicker of hope and a surge of skepticism. After discussing the letter with Dr. Russell, I agreed to meet my mother at a cafe near my office, a public place where I could leave if necessary. The meeting was tense, riddled with long silences and carefully chosen words. "Your father still believes we were right," she admitted towards the end, her voice barely a whisper. "But I miss having you in my life. I cannot return to the old dynamic," I told her, firmly but calmly. "Any relationship we have moving forward has to be based on mutual respect, not obligation." She nodded slowly. "I'm not sure what that looks like, but I'd like to try." This tentative reconnection was neither a fairy tale reconciliation nor a complete failure. Over the subsequent months, my mother and I established a careful, limited relationship, meeting occasionally for coffee, our conversations sticking to neutral topics. My father remained distant, either unwilling or unable to acknowledge the damage done, though his active hostility had ceased. A year after buying my house, I hosted a small anniversary gathering. Emma attended, bringing her new boyfriend and a homemade cake. Jessica and Tyler were there, along with some colleagues who had supported me through the lawsuit. My mother politely declined the invitation, perhaps understanding that full family reconciliation, if it ever came, was still a distant dream. As I looked around at the people who chose to be in my life, who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide, I recognized a profound shift in my understanding of family. It wasn't just biological connection or obligation, but a community built on mutual support and genuine care. This house, once a point of bitter contention, was now unquestionably mine. Not just legally but emotionally. Each mortgage payment felt like a small, defiant affirmation. Each home improvement a declaration of my right to create security for myself. The most valuable lesson from this painful journey was understanding the critical difference between guilt and responsibility. For years I had carried the crushing weight of guilt. Guilt for not meeting my parents' impossible expectations, for prioritizing my own needs, for daring to set boundaries. Therapy and experience had taught me a powerful truth. Responsibility to oneself isn't selfishness, it's self-preservation. Boundaries aren't walls, they're healthy definitions of where one person ends and another begins. I still had moments of doubt and sadness, days when I mourned the healthy family relationships I would never have. But these episodes became less frequent, less intense, as I built a life aligned with my values, not imposed expectations. As I stand in my kitchen today, preparing for another day in the home I fought so hard to protect, I realize that true freedom comes not from external validation, but from internal conviction. My parents may never fully understand or accept my choices, but their understanding is no longer necessary for my peace. This house is more than wooden beams and mortgage payments. It represents my right to define my own path, to establish healthy boundaries, and to create security on my own terms. The journey here was longer and harder than it should have been, but that only makes the achievement more meaningful. So what would you do if faced with a choice between deeply ingrained family expectations and your own well-being? Have you ever had to set incredibly difficult boundaries with loved ones? I would love to hear your stories and insights in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might need to hear that standing up for yourself is not selfish, but necessary for your survival. Thank you for listening. Take care. Goodbye.